We've only just begun striking narco-boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people.
Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, is under intense scrutiny over his "kill everybody" order on the alleged Venezuelan drug boat on September 2nd, with both the Pentagon and the Trump administration facing criticism over who ordered the strike on survivors. Both the House and Senate Armed Forces Committees are investigating the matter. Not for the first time, Hegseth's leadership was also questioned earlier when he reportedly disclosed specifics about strikes in Yemen within a private Signal group chat that included his wife, brother, and personal attorney. It seems that all those incidents were not enough. Trump's war secretary now finds himself in yet another controversy. A coup is allegedly being plotted against Pete Hegseth to remove him from his position. Hegseth seems to breathe and immediately finds himself in trouble in recent days. Conservative activist Laura Loomer alleged that the Army Secretary's office is attempting to remove War Secretary Pete Hegseth in what she called a coup. Individuals in the office of U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll have been orchestrating a coup against Pete Hegseth in an effort to have him removed by President Trump and replaced by Dan Driscoll, Laura wrote in her long post on X. She added that over the past 2 weeks, the mainstream media, which she described as strongly hostile to Hegseth, has been running puff pieces portraying Army Secretary Dan Driscoll as a rising star at the Pentagon. Her objections to Driscoll follow his recent negotiations with Ukraine aimed at ending the war and come after his involvement in a series of Middle East peace talks. Driscoll is a close friend of Vice President Vance. The two met while studying at Yale Law School. Now the Army Secretary has become the go-to person for overseas peace negotiations. There is little confidence that Hegseth can reliably deliver peace messages to key leaders. There is more trust in Dan to do that right now, reportedly said a source familiar with administration dynamics. However, little in Dan Driscoll's background suggests he's equipped to grasp the fraught history of relations between Russia and Ukraine, critics flagged. A former investment banker with a business degree, Driscoll now serves as the unlikely U.S. envoy bridging Kyiv and Moscow. Amid reviews of Driscoll's capacity to handle international conflicts, Loomer said that former Biden-era officials are pushing for him to move up the chain of command. She added that ex-National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who also knew Driscoll from their time at Yale, is strongly backing his advancement. Pentagon insiders confirmed to Loomer that Sullivan has been planting pro-Driscoll stories because he wants Hegseth removed and replaced by Driscoll. Sullivan is worried Hegseth and President Trump are going to take action against the seditious six, the 6 Democrat lawmakers. Laura lashed out on X. In the same post, she also flagged that Democrat Maggie Goodlander is one of the seditious 6 and is the wife of Jake Sullivan. She alleged that Goodlander uses a different last name to hide her marital status with Sullivan. She further noted that Goodlander is a Naval Reserve intelligence officer and could face disciplinary action for her seditious behavior. Loomer flagged Goodlander's $2,800 contribution to Dan Driscoll's failed congressional campaign as a point of concern, questioning why a Democrat allied to his spouse would support a Republican candidate. She also said she plans to raise the issue at an upcoming Pentagon briefing, as she was recently granted credentials to cover the Department of War. As Hegseth finds himself in the middle of the storm, The White House and Trump both defend the war secretary, saying he didn't order the second strike on Venezuelan boats, throwing Admiral Bradley under the bus.
As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco terrorists, and we're standing.
And Peter, you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir.
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now, which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. To me, it was an attack. It wasn't one strike, two strikes, three strikes. Somebody asked me a question about the second strike. I didn't know about the second strike. I didn't know anything about people. I wasn't involved in it. I knew they took out a boat. But I would say this, they had a strike. I hear the gentleman that was in charge of that is extraordinary. He's an extraordinary person. I'll let Pete speak about him. But Pete was satisfied. Pete didn't know about second attack having to do with two people. And I guess Pete would have to speak to it. I can say this. I want those boats taken out. And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And there's very little coming in by sea. I think we've knocked out over 90% of it. There's very little, and I understand that. There's very little. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with those pinpoint attacks. It's an amazing thing when you see a boat going along. And, you know, a lot of the press would like to say they're not, you see the boat, they're not maybe drugs. You see these boats. First of all, who has 5 engines on the back of a boat going in weird directions and loaded up with lots of white containers? They're bags or things. No, they've done an amazing job. And Peter's done an amazing job. Pete, you could probably better answer the question.
No, you're spot on, sir. I think you got to start with the baseline, which Marco laid out, everybody's laid out. We've got 20 million people invading our country over 4 years. We don't know where they're coming from. That includes Tren de Aragua and cartels and violent criminals. They bring drugs, and you mentioned it, Mr. President, poisoning, an intentional poisoning of the American people, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So the president had the courage to designate these cartels as designated terrorist organizations. Now, a number of us here served in the military and spent 20 years fighting terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS on the other side of the world. How do you treat Al-Qaeda and ISIS? Do you arrest them and treat them, pat them on the head and say, don't do that again? Or do you end the problem directly by taking a lethal, kinetic approach? And that's the way President Trump has authorized the War Department to look at these cartels. And I wish everybody could be in the room watching our professionals like Mitch Bradley, Admiral Mitch Bradley, and others at JSOC and SOCOM and other commanders. The deliberative process, the detail, the rigorous, the intel, the legal, the evidence-based way that we're able to, with sources and methods that we can't reveal here, that make sure that every one of those drug boats is tied to a designated terrorist organization. We know who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying. All these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa. This is drugs running on 4-motor fast boats or submarines that we've also struck. No one's fishing on a submarine. And I have empowered them to make that call. Now, the first couple of strikes, as you would, as any leader would want, you want to own that responsibility. So I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call after getting all the information and make sure it's the right strike. That was September 2nd. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into that, building that case and understanding that, a lot of people providing information. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people. We will eliminate that threat, and we're proud to do it.